Call to order. The Bastrop EDC Board reserves the right to convene into executive session at any time during the meeting regarding any agenda item in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, Government Code. Executive session. 2.1, the Bastrop EDC Board of Directors will meet in a closed executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, to discuss the following. 1, Section 551.074, Personnel Matters, Review of Responsibilities of the Executive Director and Legal Counsel. The time is 5 o'clock p.m. Okay, for the purpose of sticking to the timeline of our agenda, we're convening into regular session. The board did not complete their discussion on section 551.074. So what we're going to do is we're going to add it to the executive session at the end of the meeting. So therefore, the Bastrop EDC Board of Directors will reconvene into open session to discuss, consider, and or take any action necessary related to the executive session noted herein. So now we're at 5:45. So now we'll go into public comments. Do we have any public comments? No. Okay, so item 4.1, approval of meeting minutes of the regular board meetings of November 20th, 2017 and December 18th, 2017, and the special board meeting of January 4th, 2018.
Minutes from all three of those meetings are in your packets, and if you have any questions, Angela is here to answer them.
I move to approve.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries. Item 4.2, acceptance of the Bastrop's EDC financial summary reports for periods ending November 30th, 2017 and December 31st, 2017. And I'll turn this over to Sean.
Sam and I met with Tracy Waldron last week to go over the November and December financial statements. And Sam, correct me if I state this incorrectly. We're going to be making some changes, or have asked for some changes to the financial summary moving forward. In the monthly financial report, we're going to be developing a forecast for the operating expenses so that you can see a year-to-date forecast as well as the actual year-to-date as part of that. And then Tracy Waldron's also going to develop an additional page because we have so many capital improvement projects ongoing so that you can see the expenses to date on all of those projects and be able to track those on a separate page. Drew made a request today, and we're going to meet with Tracy again and try to accommodate that request. She would like to see within the report not only the year-to-date, but how we're performing over previous years in sales tax collections, similar to the page that was in the previous report that y'all had, because that is critically important. Okay, we'll try. We will use the podium. So you'll be seeing those changes coming out. There was a request to council to make these landscape, and we're more than happy for council. Tracy is converting them to landscape instead of PDF pages, 8.5 by 11s. And if that's a favor of the board, we're more than happy to make that request to make them readable. I think that there's so little information. The council ones have a lot more information on the page. I think these. Generally, when we put them on the screen, you can read them, and they read well in the packet. This is the November report. Revenue in November, $198,000 against $73,000 in expenses. We're in the green. Looking at sales tax revenue, our forecast at $209,000 to $193,000. We're about even for the year of what Tracy is forecasting. And this is where we will be adding in, this page here is where we'll be adding in the year-to-date stuff so that you'll be able to see the forecast. And then we'll add in the sales tax chart here. Looking at our expenditure comparison, we've got a $5 million total spend this year. We've spent $226,000, so we have $4,900,000 left to go this year. And then this is the projected fund balance summary page, the debt obligation page, and then we move into the December financials. Any questions on the on the November financials? All right, moving on. Revenue for December, $184,000. Expenses, $79,000. Variance is $105,000. Still in the positive on revenue and spend. Looking at sales tax collection, we're forecasting 176 against 178. Bless you. Looking at budget, we've moved up to a total of $305,000 spent this year. And then we're into the fund balance and into the total debt obligation. When Sam and I sat down, Sam did make a good catch on our balance sheet. I believe it's about $49,000 in building improvements that we're going to be writing off. We're doing the research on that now to make sure we do the write-off correctly. We believe it's associated with when the EDC bought the Main Street office, and it's the repairs associated to the building improvements when the office was built, and it was never combined in the book value with the actual real estate purchase. And so we are expecting to make that correction on the balance sheet. Drew made a good catch today. She sent 4 questions in, and one of those, we had a missed cost code in December with some of our changes in this year's budget and where we code things. It's very clearly defined in the budget booklet. We'll be doing the GL entry here over the next couple of days, or the finance department will. We've already ordered that and I've approved it, to move it $5,000 from professional services to retail recruiting, which it was a payment to our retail recruiter.
So Sean, would it be better to not approve December until we come back and see all the corrections? Or is that, I mean, I guess the board can decide that, but it sounds like there's 2 things that you're still checking on.
The write-off will probably take months before that gets actually done, because we've got to go do the research of what that $49,000 is so that we can make proper notes in the GL entry. We're just making the board aware of that. On the December change, you're accepting them based on the month and all of the knowledge that you have, and we'll bring it back next month and you could get a whole new balance sheet and a whole new set of financial statements. And if the correction's not there, that's when you ask a question of going, hey, you made us aware of this and you didn't fix it.
Yeah, for instance, on the $49,000, when Tracy looked at the documentation that she had in her notes, it said like 2 or 3 years ago to keep researching. So it might be a while. It might be a while.
And Angela just finished with the finance department a large research project and some other write-offs that we had related to construction and progress infrastructure, and that is the auditors have been asking about that, and we've been doing the research, Angela, in the finance department, to make sure that what we're getting ready to write off is actually infrastructure that we've transferred to the city of Bastrop. So as we build a road, we do it in construction and progress, but once we're done, we transfer that asset to the city of Bastrop, and it doesn't sit on our books. And since I've been here and prior to that, Tracy's been cleaning that up, not only on our books, but I believe on the city's books as well, as construction and progress that hadn't been closed out.
And as a reminder, we don't approve them, we just accept them. So you'll just clean them up and we'll keep an eye on them. Okay, thank you.
I'm expecting the audit to be completed here in the next 60 days, and Tracy will actually come and present the audit for FY17. It is the component unit audit from the city's audit is what she's going to present. Sam and I did have a conversation with her, and it will cost the EDC some money in FY19 to do the FY18 audit this way. But my recommendation, and I think Sam concurs with this, is there actually needs to be an audit book of the nonprofit, not just a component unit audit of the city's audit. And it's similar to what's done for the Hunters Crossing PID, is to have a full audit of the nonprofit done with more detailed notes of the nonprofit than just the notes that are in the city's audit. And with that, we think we're looking at another $5,000 to have that done, but I think it's money well budgeted and well spent in FY19 for FY18. It's too late to go back and do the 17 audit at this point. Since I got here 2 years ago, I believe it was the first time that even the component unit audit had come to the board of directors. Prior to that, it was presented to council and it was approved that way, but the EDC board was not presented the audit that was done by the city as a component unit. So we're making progress in that space, but that is something as you get into the budget process here in April, May timeframe when that starts, to know that the audit expense is going to go up.
Well, and then that becomes a document for the general public to have transparency of where everything's being spent, correct?
I totally agree. It was an opportunity just to get the component unit audit presented. Sure. And to take the next step is something that I think the board needs to understand now as you get into the budget process of why that audit number is.
And that's what I'm used to seeing. Sam, you're saying the same thing, right? That's accepted.
And not only for transparency for the EDC, but also if we're going to be going for bonds as the EDC and not using the city as a backstop, I think the bond companies are going to want their own financials for EDC.
Really no downside, right? I mean, it's only up.
And so that is the financial.
So I make a motion to accept the Bastrop EDC financial summaries for November 17 and December 17.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
I make a motion that we move 4.3 to the end of the meeting. We're not going to table it, right?
Do we need, we can just move it over? Okay, so item 4.3 we'll move. Yeah, so we're going to move item, obviously, 4.3, since we didn't complete our discussion, we'll move 4.3 so that when we come out of reconvene from executive session, we'll have, we'll bring 4.3 back. So moving on to 4.4, presentation and update concerning BEDC projects, downtown trail expansion, Seton Family of Hospitals Performance Agreement, and Agnes Street Extension and Drainage, Technology Drive Extension and Drainage, 921 Main Street, Bastrop County Land Sale, Granite and Stone, LLC, Project Minerals, 2017 Sales Tax Update, outstanding BEDC agreements, and the Bastrop Business Industrial Park Development.
So we wanted to be able to provide the board a better update on the activities meeting to meeting. And so when we changed the KPIs and went to reporting where we're doing on the KPIs, we stopped reporting the activities of the board beyond those that are involved with the KPIs. And so we got to a point where we felt like we're just not providing y'all enough update on what's actually going on at the EDC meeting to meeting. And so this is a very similar presentation that I'm going to give tomorrow night to the City Council. There's a few modifications because that was prepared in advance of this one, and so we added some items to this, and we took some items off that y'all had already seen. Downtown trail expansion, we had a TxDOT meeting scheduled last Tuesday during the ice storm. That meeting has been postponed, and we're rescheduling that to get that up and going, but we're at 90% plan set. Keep Bastrop County Beautiful received a governor's grant, and TxDOT administers that. And that meeting last week was to get with TxDOT about how for them to receive that grant and what needs to take place in order to be able to use it for this project. We want to make sure that if that funding is going to be used for this project, in addition to our funding, that we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's before we start the TxDOT approval process on the actual plan sets. And as you saw in your board packet, we're ready for TxDOT reviews on the plan set, but we're probably going to wait until after we get that first meeting with Keep Bastrop County Beautiful, and then we'll start bid set preparations. And we've got two minor right-of-way issues. Once we know how this is going to progress, we'll go visit with those two property owners on Highway 71 down near the motel, and then also at the gas station is where we've got a little bit of right-of-way issue that we'll go address with them. This benefits them. We don't expect any objections from them, and so one of them fixes a drainage problem, and the other one provides a sidewalk in front of their store, and we just need to acquire some additional right-of-way from them. So.
Can you define plan set? I just don't understand the concept.
So plans go, typically we review plans at 60%. When they're 60% complete, to provide feedback to the engineers, and then we provide feedback at the 90% plan set mark when they're 90% complete to the engineer. So the engineer will bring us the plans at 60%, make sure we know what's going on with the project, make sure we understand the design and any design criteria that we need to provide input on. And then between 60 and 90%, there's a bridge option that's going to be included within the plans. And at the 60% plan, we identified that there was an issue and what the potential solutions were. And there's the low-cost option, and then there's the expensive option related to that, and the type of bridging that we're going to need over one of the.
Sam,
yes.
it's literally the 24 by 36 construction drawings.
Yeah.
That's what he's calling
sorry,
plans.
I didn't answer the question.
Sorry, just trying to help you out
No,
there, Sean.
So at 90%, once we're all signed off on that and we're ready to start the text approval process, there'll be 100% complete submitted. They'll get comments back and there'll be corrections made to it and resubmitted. Typically, we try to do that once. The other thing that will happen is they will start preparing the bid set documents, which is the actual criteria for bidding the project. So to the contractor, so they know what our specifications are, what the process for bidding is going to be. So, Seton Family of Hospitals, got an email right before I came in here. This is still out for signature. Will be the last signature on it, but Habib and the lawyers at Seton and at the developer are working on getting those circulated, getting them signed. They're working on the escrow agreement right now, and I think they've finally reached all of the terms on that. And the escrow agent, and got the fees worked out with the escrow agent on that. These plan sets, the next step for this will be 60% design or 60% complete of the plan set, and that's where we're at on this project. MLK Technology.
And do you expect the 60% plans? It says next step, but it doesn't have a date.
It does not have a date.
And I know it's not your date. I'm just, if you have an estimate.
We expect them sometime after we sign the contract with Seton. Is when that is all signed, sealed, and delivered.
Okay.
So it's complicated.
So we still have executed, is it in their part at this point?
It
I
is.
assume?
We're just waiting for the final set of documents to show up on our desk. All the terms have been agreed to. They just have got to circulate them, get them signed. There's 5 sets of originals that are going to be signed by 3 different parties. And they were working out the final terms on the escrow agreement, which we were neutral on the escrow agreement and who the escrow agent was. That was more of a developer and Seton deal. Seton's got the most skin in the game in that escrow, and so they've got that worked out. And the fee is, I don't think there's a fee at all. If I remember correctly, the escrow company is going to do it, the title company that does that. MLK Technology, just with the other 2 projects, this is the 3rd project in that group. We are working on the engineering is released, and there's ongoing surveying, and they're working on the 60% plan set. Again, we were supposed to get an update last Tuesday on this project, and so I don't really have a good update on it. What I do know about it is we did talk to the financial advisor and bond counsel. They intend to be at the February meeting to talk to y'all. Actually, that's on this project. We did talk to bond counsel on this project, and they plan on being at the meeting upcoming in February about that debt issuance. And so Tracy Waldron's on board with that. That's Kristen Servan at Norton Rose Fulbright as bond counsel, and then Jason Hughes at what used to be First Southwest is the financial advisor. And so this project here is we're waiting on the 60% plan set. I'll get an update when we meet with the engineer in the coming weeks and get it moving as the other 2 projects start going into plan review at TxDOT, and then we're getting into that 60-90% on the Agnes Street. The Bastrop County land sale, this contract is executed. It's at the title company. We can't do the conveyance on that until the MLK Technology project is complete, but the contract is executed and it is at the title company. Granite and stone.
I understand also we have to do the retention pond, right?
That's part of that. That is part of it's the street and drainage project related to this.
But that retention pond is in that project altogether?
Yes, right here.
Okay.
And we amended the project probably 3 months ago. We amended the project on that in the budget to accommodate building the pond. Bastrop Granite and Stone is at the bank. It is still moving. They are hoping to get financing approval here real soon and be able to continue moving forward with their project. And so it is still alive, and they're just working their way through their financing issue.
Any percentage of that is not going to make it? What's your best guess?
They were in town last week. I would say it's a high probability at this point that that project's going to make. Good response from the bank, good response from the project owners. I think that they're real excited about it, and there's some more steps that they've got to check off before they get ready to break ground and move forward with it. But I think they're real close. I would give it 70-30, 80-20, somewhere in that range.
So
Sean,
it's
is
better
there-
than a couple months ago, yeah.
Yeah,
Is there anything that is a stumbling block that is either a BEDC or a City of Bastrop issue?
Not at the moment. No.
So the ball's completely in their court?
It was really business plan, pro forma development, getting those in an acceptable form to the bank, and then the bank going through their underwriting process and loan approval process. And you know, they went to the bank right after we did the deal, and the bank provided feedback, and they've just been going through that process of business plan, pro forma development. Proving up the market was an opportunity because of what they do. And so they've done that. They're at the bank, and the response we got last week was good.
And are they bumping up against any deadlines or anything like that?
No. We probably, out of safety sakes, there's a provision in their contract. We'll probably, once they get their financing approval, we'll actually bring that contract back to the board, but I haven't visited with Charlie yet about that contract and the need to do that. But my understanding of the contract and the way it's written, we probably will need to bring it back to the board because of the delay from when it was originally approved to now. So I was asked to do some analysis on sales tax collection in Bastrop, and this is a presentation that I'm going to be giving to council tomorrow night related to sales tax collection and where sales tax came from in fiscal year 17. And so we subscribed to a service called ZacTax, which is an aggregator of sales tax data and has a GIS component to it, in which we're able to map out the community and then look at the sales tax collectors within that district and give us some idea of what's going on and who's doing what. And so we break it down pretty simply: Burleson Crossing, Hunters Crossing, the retail there, Highway 71, which is just outside the Main Street district, all the way up to Old Austin, the end of Old Austin Highway here, into a little bit of Riverside Grove. There's some commercial lots there across the street from the school. The Walmart Power Center. Then the green here is the Main Street district, which for what we're talking about tonight is the only part of Main Street we're talking about. But we also pull numbers internally in this smaller box for the downtown area. Highway 71 and 95, and then the business park. And we can draw as many of these as we want and have overlays and be able to pull numbers on a geographic basis. And so when we look at this, we went and looked at all of these, and out of about $6.6 million collected in sales tax between the city of Bastrop and the EDC, 1.5%. Burleson Crossing produced a little over 1.2 million. Walmart Power Center produced about 1 million. 900,000 in this Highway 71 area. Hunters Crossing came in at 793. 71 and 95 at 409. The Main Street District, the green block, at 308, and then the business park at 46,000. And then you see the percentages up there of each of those districts. And so the top 5 sales tax districts, being Burleson Crossing, the Walmart Power Center, Highway 71, Hunters Crossing, and the Highway 71-95 intersection, they produce about 67% of the sales tax for the EDC in the city. And then Main Street is number 6, and the business park is number 7. And so just a breakdown of the sales tax and the corporate limits, it's about $8.7 million total. About $4.3 million to the city of Bastrop, about $2.1 million to the EDC, and $2.1 million to Bastrop County is where the other 0.5% goes. Y'all asked me at the last meeting to kind of provide an update on outstanding BEDC agreements, and in your packet is actually the full page. In order to make this fit on the screen, I took a screenshot so that it would fit up there. We do this at the start of every budget cycle. April of last year, as you noticed on the document, April 5th. This, as well as debt service, to start the process and go, hey, here's our obligations we have to pay and have to budget for accordingly. And so we have not updated this for 18. That'll be something that we'll start doing in March as we start getting ready for the budget process. But when we did this last year, Burleson Crossing is looking like it'll pay out in 2022. And then Buc-ee's looks like it'll pay out in 2020. With this deal going to 2024 and Buc-ee's going out to 2023. So all of them are performing ahead of standard, and that's a sales tax rebate. So they actually have to collect the sales tax, and then we rebate it to them. I like to refer to it as unrecognized revenue. until they're paid off, we're just taking revenue and shifting it from bringing it in and shifting it back to the project. Then we have an incentive schedule.
But it is included in the revenue number, right?
It is.
Okay, there's just a balance.
It just balances off
Yeah.
the books.
Okay.
It balances out of the budget. So we bring it in as revenue, and then it goes out, and we do the best that we can to project it. 2 years ago, we had a surplus in there. Last year, we were actually short and had to move money into the account to make sure that we balanced out the account. The board moved $25,000 out of contingency into this account to make sure that we covered correctly.
So if you would go back a couple slides to kind of make Kevin's point, that Bastrop EDC number of 2.191 million, the truth of the matter is, in that same fiscal year, 329,000 of that went back to someone.
Correct.
Just so, and that's for all of us and for public and everything. It's physically collected before it's rebated, and it's in that number. So if those contracts were paid off, we would be keeping another $329,000.
That is
And
correct.
that number's going, well, it'll go up a little bit, and then the very last year it's lower unless we do additional 380 agreements.
That's correct.
Also, I'm sure we've all seen that Buc-ee's is adding some more pumps somehow.
I believe the number's 44.
Yeah, but there's no additional incentive tied to that?
There is not.
Okay, so we're still at the same pace. Obviously, they should probably pay down quicker. I'm sure they think they're going to pay down quicker with those additional pumps, right?
I would anticipate that. We'll be very conservative through the budget process. We'll go back. There's a whole nother sheet that goes along with this behind to make those calculations for what we're estimating. I like to be conservative on this. I'd rather have $50,000 or $60,000 left over at the end of the year that goes into fund balance than be $25,000, $30,000, $50,000 short and having to pull it out of fund balance to make this account whole. But we'll go over all of those calculations during the budget process. So this is the incentive schedule. Obviously, the granite and stone project is added to this, but it was not a project as of April 5th that was on here. We do this and project out when we sign an agreement where we believe they're going to receive their certificate of occupancy, which is typically when the first rebate occurs or incentive payment occurs, and then based on the incentive schedule, we project out when payments, which budget years they should come into. Because it allows us to really look at the total annual incentive obligation and to budget accordingly for that and understand that whole number. And it starts with redevelopment grants up here, 380 agreements, which is where Buc-ee's and Burleson Crossing are. We fund $60,000 a year to the city of Bastrop to develop water. And then special projects and incentives is where a real estate rebate goes into. We did add a cost code last year into the budget, and it is specifically for job incentives not associated with real estate the EDC owns. So if we go do a project that, in these cases, this is all real estate we sold and are rebating the proceeds of those sales back to the company. And so we're holding these on the balance sheet as a liability, and as we rebate the money to them, that reduces our liability on our balance sheet. It's really cash on hand that we have. It's not necessarily sales tax revenue. It's land sale money that we're rebating back to the company. But we did add a line item last year for companies that aren't on real estate, and it's not a land rebate back to them, and it's truly some other kind of incentive so that we can track that separately from those liability items on the balance sheet. And so this is kind of how we project it out, and it just gives us some surety to know where we're going to be and whether a deal we can actually afford to do a deal, because there's some real reality out there that there are some very large deals out there that we got to make sure that we're going to have, if we decide to do them, we've got to have the money to be able to do them and how we're going to pay them back and how that structure and those rebates are, or those incentives. And so outstanding agreements, granite and stone, will get added to the list as soon as they close on their real estate, and we can project out when they're going to get their CO and their first rebate is built off that CO. The business improvement grants are all complete from FY17. We're looking at that program for FY 2018. The meeting on that was scheduled for the week that the voting for the top 5 is, and so that meeting has been pushed, I believe, to March now. And so we'll have that conversation with Sarah O'Brien and the city manager and come back with that business improvement grant, what our recommendation is moving forward on that, and get input from the board.
When he says top 5, he means the small business revolution, and that we're expecting that decision to be made on February 13th, and the voting window will be a week. So you say top 5, and I know what you're talking about, but nobody else does.
And then in the rear of the room, related to the small business revolution, there is a photo frame, so feel free to get your picture taken. And then the Bastrop Fine Arts Guild, there's a very detailed note in your agenda packet. The city manager is working on this. There's also 2 outstanding agreements with the city of Bastrop, she has been working with them on a workout plan, and there, at some point in the later date, there will be a joint meeting with the EDC board and the city council, and with the Bastrop Fine Arts Guild to come and present their workout plan and work through that process and what it looks like. And if you would like to see a copy of our agreement or the city agreements, I have all of those, and I'm more than happy to load them in the Dropbox so that y'all can read through them. And we'll give you a synopsis at some point when we get closer to that of what the challenges are associated.
How long do you think it'll be before they come back with that meeting?
Hopefully, and
I'm expecting before the end of this month, so I expect the meeting to be sometime next month based on a conversation I've had today that he doesn't know about.
Okay. Yeah. I was thinking the end of February. One of the things that the city manager and I discussed was combining that with our joint meeting in March. But if it's going to occur before then, they need some certainty in it. And so
I think they're going to be ready to have a preliminary conversation, but I think March is a good plan. And because there were 3 agreements, and because they're with 2 of them are with the city and 1 is with BEDC, we didn't think it was appropriate to bounce them around between meetings. So we thought we'd have a joint meeting, have one conversation about all of it at one time. And I'm sure Sean would, and we'd like to know if you guys don't want to do it that way, let Sean know, but that's the logic behind it.
That would definitely be my recommendation to the board, is the joint meeting, because those agreements are very similar in certain ways and very different in other ways, and the workout plan needs to be a unified plan that both the council and the EDC board agree on. We started on this a few months ago, and then we're asked to send all of our files, copies of them, to the city so that they can look at them, and they're taking the lead on this and working on the workout plan. And then I believe this is the last item, is the business park update. Y'all got this at the special meeting as well. Granite and Stone is on this 5.5 acres. When Technology MOK is this, we'll have 5 acres available there. The office site here at Jackson and Business Park, the Bastrop County site, and then we've got 2.8 acres and 5.5 acres down here in the southern end of the park. We've started looking at the real southern end of the park and going, how can we develop that makes sense? And I don't know that it's anything where the interest level is in that, but we have an obligation to at least look at what reasonable ideas are. And our engineer, that was one of the conversations we were going to have last week with them. They've done a preliminary drawing of some ideas that we've had as we've had some projects come in that need some large acreage tracts down there, but they're very preliminary. And I think what the guidance I need from the board is, do you want to have a workshop inside of a regular meeting to talk about the park and have the engineer here to be able to answer all of his questions that he knows about, or ask him questions of his knowledge, or do you want to have a special meeting independent of that and just talk about the park and the challenges and the opportunities out there?
What does the agenda look like for next month?
It could be fairly heavy.
And then March is the joint meeting with the
Correct.
The city council. I guess I'd go for a special.
Yeah, my recommendation, there's a lot of history on that park, and I think it would behoove us as a board to kind of maybe take a step back and process the history and all the work that has been done, and then make a decision on what we want to do. For as long as I've served on this board, it seems like we just can't really, because there is an expense to it. The bottom line is, if we are going to get out of that park and not be landowners, there's going to be an expense to it. And I just think there's been a little hesitation, to really take a step out there and do what needs to be done. So I think that would be the first process, is for us to sit down, decide what we want to do, what that vision looks like, before we start involving staff to spend hours and engineers and all that stuff. So that's however that looks. I'll let staff, let Sean go, based, on your judgment for that, but I think that's what has to happen first, and then kind of go from there.
So I think I hear you saying we almost need like a two-part meeting, do kind of a status quo of where are we and how did we get here, and then talk about something with an engineer, if that's even an appropriate conversation that we want to have.
And in that initial meeting is also kind of determine what we want, what are the options, and because at the end of the day, there are so many options out there, we can spend a lot of money and time. What about this? What about this? I think we need to define what that looks like and what 1, 2, or 3, call it down, and then get engineers, professionals in here to kind of say, okay, what are options based, what does option 1 look like, what does option 2 look like, and et cetera, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, and we need the engineer at the first meeting because there are some challenges associated with the park that only an engineer can speak to. We had a land use study done in 2015 that was completed right after I got here that looked at the park. We've done some engineering back in 15 and 14 and 15. And there's engineering that goes back before that of some designs and layouts. And we've done a little bit of work in the southern end of the park last year. We've done a little bit of work lately just because we have some projects that need some large acreage tracts, and so there's some options down there to be able to accommodate those. But there's definitely nothing set in stone down there. It's going to be a challenge because you really are dealing with 3 different components of the park. You have a very tree-driven section up here in C3, C2, A8 and C3. They have a little bit of slope to them, but there's the opportunity to cut and fill those. So basically you cut the upper portion, roll it over and fill it, and you create some pad sites in there, but that's not free and it has some cost associated with it. And then there's some road structure designs that could be a little bit more efficient and produce sites that are better suited for the project targets that we have. And then even within detention, we've done a lot of hydrology work out there, the engineers have. We have a good understanding, he has a good understanding of the hydrology and how to maximize the flatlands down here in a smaller pond with some interim ponds up higher to catch and slow the flow of water coming down off that hill. And so the engineer definitely needs to be a part of the conversation, the first one. And I think a special meeting would be what I would recommend. And then any future workshops could be held within a regular meeting as drawings and designs and thought processes are coming back. And we'll bring big posters and put them on the wall so that everybody can kind of see how it's moved through the process. We have a lot of those from the different stages within the park.
Fair enough.
And that is it for the update.
What about 921? Is that what it is? I didn't see 921 on the charts.
Did I put it on the 9 is on the list, and I got the wrong file. 921, I will provide a brief update. The realtor was in town last week that is representing the JV partnership. They're actually working some projects at the moment that are looking at the site and are actively marketing it. Basically the February meeting, that letter of intent expires in March. And so by February, they need to come and really present to the board where they're at and where they're going and whether or not they need an extension to the LOI to find that first floor tenant. They're also marketing the second floor, but there's some uncertainty in the second floor if you don't know when you're going to start construction of the building for an office user. And so once there's some certainty and when construction will start, I think there'll be more opportunity with the office users that are out there in the marketplace because you can give them a delivery date. The other thing is if we get to the end of the LOI, we're going to have a serious conversation about interim remediation at the site. If it is not leased, we need to have the engineer come back and visit with the board and go, what interim steps do we need to take to secure this if it's going to sit for another 3, 6, 9 months? And that way, as we get into better weather this summer, have an engineering plan ready to go if there's not a lease tenant in construction is not imminent.
When does the LOI run out?
I believe it's March. It's before the March meeting. I'd have to pull
March as in like 2 months from now?
Yes, ma'am. It was 90, I believe it was 120 days, 90 days. I'd have to pull it out and get it, but I know that they need to come back at the February meeting because I believe it expires before the March meeting.
My recommendation, if it's going to expire before the March meeting, I hate to do this, but could we have a basis of a plan so that we can kind of trigger that so we're not doing it after the fact, if that'd be great.
And we have the remediation plans proposals and OPCs, and we can get them updated for the February meeting.
Perfect. Just bring them.
That way you have some idea what that's going to cost and what the recommendations from the engineer is, and we can have the engineer that did those plans come and present those and what the viable options is. Do we have to do it all, or is there some interim steps that we can take that does exactly what we want to do? Do we need to take out the entire foundation now, or can we cut it in such a manner and be able to drain it appropriately while we wait to find a tenant to take out the whole thing with construction? And those are some of the things that have to be thought through. Removal of the back wall, is it something that needs to be done now, or is it something that needs to occur at a later date? And the engineer can speak specifically to what those options are.
Are there any other items? I mean, Friday, when we were with Tracy, there was one other agreement that you mentioned. I can't remember. There was that the EDC was a backstop to a loan, or...
Correct. Back on the incentive schedule, the City of Bastrop has 2 Texas Department of Agriculture Community Development Block Grant real estate loans to Deep in the Heart Art Foundry and Garments to Go. And they're making their payments on that. And compliance and monitoring on that is with the City of Bastrop and the Finance Department, because that's who collects the money and who the original agreement was with. We provide a backstop to that should there be a default and or a beneficiary to it, but we don't monitor those and we don't have compliance. If there's an issue, Tracy picks up the phone and calls, and there hasn't been an issue since I've been here.
I have on that request that I gave you about the sales tax. Will you go back to 41? This is where I would like to see that, because well, at least for me as a small business, our sales tax for a year could be going up, but it's important to me to see where it could be losing it. So like if your downtown area, if it's not getting this business, we can see, well, okay, Burleson's growing, but your downtown is dwindling. So it's important to me not only to see what the past year's sales tax were, but it's important to me to see where you're actually getting it.
I'll have to go back and run the report and see if we can actually break it down by district prior to FY17, because we didn't subscribe to the software until last year.
I was just letting you know that was what was really important.
But we
to
can
see
do it in the future.
We may not have the aggregated data going back before FY17. I'll have to go check.
Well, that's fine. That way in the future we can tell if Home Depot's dying, we'll know that area's going or whichever.
Correct. And that's the whole. This is to build a basis so that moving forward every year you're able to look at this and have a comparison of these districts. And there may be another district that develops that needs to be added or the boundaries need to be changed.
And Drew, I know you know this, but we should refer to it as Hunter's Crossing, not Home Depot, because there's lots of companies and it's aggregated data for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And internally as staff, we dig down into the numbers a lot farther on than what we would present publicly. And so we're tracking all of that and are aware of where our opportunities are out there in the marketplace.
But Drew's making an excellent point in that as we are specifically working on economic development projects, this is a great way to see if they're paying off. It's a very great measurable key performance indicator for the board that we put money into this area. We're expecting to see some sales tax increase, and if we're tracking it moving forward, that there's the hard numbers.
Yeah, and it's like Seton, Bastrop Grove, where Seton is, as that breaks ground, we'll add another district around that. Right now it would be Woodland Village, and that's too small for us to do that.
But it's also important that the citizens know that you might have this great sales tax as general, but your downtown is dying, or this part of town is dying, so it can be focused that way. When they just see a big picture, oh yay, we're getting more sales tax, they think everybody's doing wonderful. So this way it breaks it down, it lets us know who might not be doing great.
I'll go back and check the aggregated data to see if we have it location specific.
But going forward, it's fine. That way we have some comparison.
Okay, it's easy enough to do.
So could we do this like quarterly?
We can. I think that what you're going to be seeing is some other sales tax reports coming forward, probably on a quarterly basis, where we're coming back and revisiting them.
I'm at the presentation on the status of the projects.
Oh yeah, if that's the board's. Sorry. I was on sales tax. Slide up there. He's pointing at the slide. No. The update on the projects, as often as y'all want it, we prepare the reports every April at the start of the budget process. And you know, as we add projects, we can update the spreadsheet and bring it to y'all on a quarterly basis.
But we're clearly having some process discussions, and it seems to me that one of the things we might do is have a rolling agenda moving forward. So if we know something's coming, it's going to be done in October, then we need to talk about it at the July meeting and know that we have to make a decision by August. So quarterly may not be the right answer. We may need to time specific to the projects, in my opinion, to catch things before they're expired.
We keep a list and a board of all agenda items that are pending out there and looking at when they're going to be ready to go on the agenda. And then we do a little bit of agenda management as we go forward. So, we used to actually publish all those items, and there was a little bit of backlash last year when we were publishing those items of future agenda items, and so they were taken off the report. And we're more than happy to supply that in any form, fashion, but we typically we're already, tomorrow morning, we'll be working on the February agenda, and we're already looking at what's going on the March agenda and projecting out what items are going to come to the board.
Any other comments? Just one last comment on sales tax. I think whenever you're, to use the mayor's words, in my opinion, whenever you're showing any type of revenue, and sales tax is a form of revenue, I think it's always good to show what the trends are. Because I think it can be a false sense of security of saying, oh my gosh, we just generated $5 million. But if the trends are -4%, -3%, or if they're positive, it just can paint a picture. So I think whenever you're referencing any type of revenue, it'd always be good, just if it's just on the bottom, just as a reference point. So someone looking at that can say, okay, our trends are trailing at, rolling 12 at -2%, but this is where we are today. Just FYI.
Yeah, and y'all should be getting a monthly email as soon as the sales tax reports come out that Angela puts together and sends out of how we're doing year over year. And if there's anything additional you would like to see in that report, we're more than happy to look at it and see how we can fit it into what we already have existing, because we've got a pretty good spreadsheet built, Angela does, and how to put that together and get it out.
That's great. I'm just saying, just for any time if you're going to put something out on an agenda item, for us and for public, I think it'd be really good to just put that trend in there. We get them on a monthly basis, so we know what those trends are, but just from a standpoint of posting this up, it'd be fantastic. Any other thoughts? Nope. So no action on 4.4. So, Charlie, question? I know that's the number one. The second, do I have to restate section 551? Okay. 5.1, the Bastrop, the time is 6:30. The Bastrop EDC Board of Directors will meet in a closed executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, to discuss the following. Section 551.072, deliberation about the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, project Strategic Revolution, Whitehorse, Little Sprout, and/or Spring Loaded. Section 551.074, personnel matters, review responsibilities of the executive director and legal counsel. This way. And section 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiation, project Strategic, Whitehorse, John Wooden, Clean Purpose, Little Sprout, Spring Loaded, Apothecary 3, Goat Farm, C&Say, Coppershot Distillery, and/or Pecan Park Commercial. Bastrop, the time is 7:51. The Bastrop EDC Board of Directors will reconvene into open session to discuss, consider, and/or take any action necessary related to the executive session noted herein. So, pursuant to recent events, the board has given feedback to the executive director. To this end, this board will form a committee to clarify the responsibilities, policies and procedures to include the director's employee agreement. In addition, we have given direction to legal counsel to begin holding agenda meetings with the executive director prior to the agenda getting posted to ensure complete legal review. So at this time, we talked about forming a committee, so raise of hands, who?
I'd like to nominate you.
Me, okay.
I would like to be on that committee.
Yes, and I'd like to be on that committee as well.
Okay. So we would also ask that legal counsel would join us on that committee as well, and we will start that process. Yeah, as needed. But we'll begin to start that process. Are there any comments from anybody? Nope. Okay. So the Bastrop, the time is now 7:52. The Bastrop EDC Board of Directors will meet and close executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, to discuss the following. Section 551.072, deliberation about the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, project Strategic Revolution, White Horse, Little Sprout, and/or Spring Loaded. Number 2, Section 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations, Project Strategic, White Horse, John Wooden, Clean Purpose, Little Sprout, Spring Loaded. Apothecary. 3, Goat Farm, C&Say, Copper Shot Distillery, and/or Pecan Park Commercial. I don't think I'll be out of line to say that there will be no action after executive session. Just keep throwing that out there for you, so you don't hang around. You're more than welcome to watch us adjourn when we get out of here. But the Bastrop EDC Board of Directors will reconvene into open session to discuss, consider, and/or take any action necessary related to the executive session noted herein. The time is 8:38. We are adjourned.